120. That is the absolute magic number today. 120 marks in exactly 120 minutes. Welcome to this explainer. If you are gearing up for the JKSSB exam, well, that number is literally the challenge standing between you and success. Think about it. You have precisely 1 minute per question to prove what you know. There is zero room for hesitation, which is exactly why we need to lock down a flawless strategy right now.
So today, we're completely breaking down the JKSSB Laboratory Attendant exam. Consider this your ultimate roadmap. We're going to cover the whole shebang, from how you should tackle your prep right from day one, all the way to the super specific post-exam answer key process. If you want to absolutely maximize your score with the time you have left, you are in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our agenda to methodically solve this exam puzzle. First, the JKSSB exam blueprint, then cracking the 120-mark syllabus, followed by your last 30 days strategy. After that, we've got pro tips for reasoning and science, a quick look at why mock tests matter, and finally, post-exam answer key objections. All right, starting off with Section 1, the JKSSB exam blueprint. Because hey, before you can win the game, you've really got to understand the foundational rules of the test.
So the March 1st exam is an offline, objective, OMR-based paper. You've got a 2-hour window to conquer those 120 marks. And because of this specific format, your speed and accuracy are absolutely paramount. You can't just know the answers in your head. You have to physically identify them and bubble them in super fast. Plus, negative marking is a real factor here, so precision under pressure is your ultimate goal.
Moving right along to Section 2, cracking the 120-mark syllabus. Now, I know looking at a massive list of subjects can feel totally overwhelming at first glance. But honestly, when we break it down, it actually becomes a highly manageable target. Now, what's really interesting about the distribution here is the perfect symmetry. 6 subjects, exactly 20 marks each. We're talking general English, awareness, science, mathematics, computer applications, and the mental ability test. This perfectly equal weightage proves one crucial thing. There is nowhere to hide. You literally cannot ignore a subject you dislike and just hope to make it up somewhere else. A totally balanced, comprehensive approach across all 6 sections is absolutely mandatory for selection. And that brings us to Section 3, your last 30 days strategy. As the clock ticks down, it is completely normal to feel a bit of anxiety, but random studying or drowning in heavy textbooks right now, that's only going to hurt you. We need a strict, actionable roadmap.
Here is your 3-phase blueprint to success. Phase 1, the first 15 days, is all about concept strengthening. Please don't reread everything. Just revise the important rules, the frequently asked concepts, and those high-scoring areas using your short notes. Phase 2, days 16 through 25, shifts heavily into practice and accuracy. You need to be grinding out MCQs and really analyzing your mistakes, whether they're grammar slips or logic traps. Finally, Phase 3, those last 5 days. Listen to me here, this is absolutely crucial. Do not study new topics at the last minute. Stick exclusively to rapid revision of formulas, facts, and full-length mock tests to really lock in that confidence.
Let's transition to Section 4, pro tips for reasoning and science. Now, experts have noted that while the recent JKSSB website operator exam was considered relatively easy with its one-line statements, this laboratory attendant exam is definitely going to be tougher. Why? Mostly because of the general science section. So let's chunk this tactical advice down. For general science, the syllabus is vast. We're talking chemistry, physics, biology, and environmental science. The secret? Stick strictly to your NCERT and Class 10 books. Those tricky statement-type questions are pulled straight from these exact sources. For reasoning, you want to heavily focus on number and letter series, coding decoding, and direction sense. For math, make sure you've mastered mensuration, 2D and 3D shapes, and profit/loss calculations. And for English and computers, the syllabus remains remarkably consistent with other JKSSB exams, so just rely on those established patterns. Now, if there is one golden rule for execution, especially in the mental ability or reasoning section, it's what educators call the sure shot formula. If you want to guarantee 20 out of 20 marks in that section, you absolutely must solve 50 to 100 questions per individual topic. If you actually do that, you'll cover every possible pattern, from weird odd number sequences to complex coding structures, and you'll be able to solve them instantly on exam day. Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, why mock tests matter. Because let's face it, knowing the material is only half the battle. The other half, surviving the relentless pressure of the clock.
78. That is the massive number of practice tests available right now in some of the top dedicated prep series, alongside dozens of targeted sectional mini-tests. Why so many? Well, practicing in a timed, simulated environment is literally the only way to improve your speed and time management. It cuts down on silly errors, it completely stops exam day panic, and it trains your brain to process those 120 questions at that strict 1 minute per question pace.
Finally, let's look ahead to Section 6, Post-Exam Answer Key Objections. We really want to bridge that gap from your prep to the aftermath. What actually happens after you hand over that OMR sheet? Well, the board will eventually release an official provisional answer key notice. Once the exam wraps up, they use a notification just like this one from March 6th to let candidates know the provisional keys are out. And crucially, it outlines the incredibly strict rules for raising objections if you genuinely believe they got a question wrong. Attached to that notice, you'll find provisional key matrices. They'll be broken down by your specific test booklet, so Series A, B, C, and D. You have to meticulously check your personal responses against your specific series column. If you spot a discrepancy, you totally have the right to challenge it, but you absolutely have to play by their rules. And those rules are no joke, so pay close attention. Objections generally have to be submitted in offline mode only, at designated JKSSB offices. You usually get a super tight window, like 3 working days, starting from a specific date, such as March 10th. You can't just complain either. You actually have to provide hard copies of documentary proof backing up your claim. On top of that, there's a 200 rupee fee per question, paid via demand draft. The silver lining? If your objection turns out to be genuinely correct, you do get that fee refunded. But here is the literal make or break detail. You must submit your objection using the exact prescribed format, known as Annexure B. You fill in your roll number, candidate details, the exact question number, and your proof. And crucially, listen to this, you have to use a separate copy of this form on a completely separate page for every single question you challenge. If you just list a bunch of questions on one single form, only the first one gets considered and the rest are totally ignored. No exceptions. So you now know exactly what you are up against. You know the syllabus, the timeline, the insider tips for the toughest subjects, and even exactly how to handle the answer key after the dust settles. With this blueprint in your hands and that 120-mark challenge looming ahead, how are you going to spend your crucial next 30 days? The plan is laid out right here, but the execution, that is entirely up to you. Stay focused, stick to the strategy, and go get those marks.